So, good morning, all. So, I welcome you all for this interactive session with our scientist, Mr. VB Lal. So, I welcome Lal sir. So, basically, today's session is going to be a question answer session. Questions are have been sent by our volunteers and audience earlier only. So, Lal sir is going to answer the questions which are commonly asked by many of our participants. So we will start our session now. So Lal sir, our first question is, why is hydrogen
Just,
and helium?
just, 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 just 1 minute before that.
Yes, sir.
These questions are some of the questions are so I should say deep and thought-provoking that I'm really I feel really honored in answering these questions. ऐसा इतना अच्छा लग रहा है मुझे कि इतने deep thinking questions आए हैं in participants से.
Yes,
And
sir.
it's really बहुत ही कुछ सवाल ऐसे हैं जिसमें कि मुझे काफी सोचना पड़ा, बुक्स कंसल्ट करनी पड़ी देखने के लिए कि क्या जवाब ठीक जवाब हो सकता है इनका. But anyway, I am very impressed with the questions.
Yes, sir. We appreciate the efforts taken by our audience. So we will start our interactive session. So, sir, question number one is, why is hydrogen and helium used as fuel in launch vehicles?
Okay, hydrogen is used as a fuel in the launch vehicles. It is used in cryogenic engines as liquid hydrogen. Hydrogen is under pressure to liquefied and stored at minus 200 degrees Celsius. And oxygen is also liquefied and kept at about minus 180 degrees C. And then they are brought out and ignited. It generates huge amount of heat and gas. Gas means steam, and that is used to drive the cryogenic engines.
Okay.
Hydrogen also being used now. It's being tried for use in commercial vehicles like cars and hydrogen fueled scooters, cars, auto drive, buses, etc. Lekin that is still in the R&D mode only. There is not much progress at present. Regarding helium, helium, as we know, is an inert gas. Inert gas cannot be used for as a propellant because it will not burn into anything else. But still, helium is used as a pressurizing gas. For example, in cryogenic engines, helium is used for pressurizing the hydrogen and oxygen liquids. So they are brought out, and this pressurization done at about very high pressure, something like 200 to 250 psi. That means about 15 atmospheres pressure. And with that pressure, that hydrogen and oxygen are pushed out into the cryogenic engine and allowed to burn. But it cannot be used directly as a fuel.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
That completes the answer.
okay, and next question is, I have question that you explain that we have to give less injection velocity so as to achieve favorable orbit. But then you also explain that the kinetic energy should be high in that case. So can you explain this?
See, it's like this. It is actually not kinetic energy which is high, which is required for the engine to start, for the rocket to start. What you need is high thrust, because kinetic energy high means half mv square is going to be high. That means velocity is going to be high, and velocity is going to be very low at the time of starting. It will be starting from zero and then slowly building up the speed. So it is high thrust, and high thrust is going to give uh, push to the rocket. It will start and then start getting accelerated towards higher velocities. High injection velocity. The second part is injection velocity. Injection velocity is not high or low. It is a specific velocity which is required to put the satellite in orbit at a certain altitude. At that altitude, for every altitude, there is a different injection velocity. Like injection velocity for a 1,000-kilometer orbit is going to be different for a 36,000-kilometer orbit. So injection velocity does not depend on thrust. It depends only on the orbit, the height of the orbit at which you are going to launch or keep the satellite in orbit.
Okay. So our next question is how the flame burns in outer space if there is no oxygen in the space.
That is simple. You carry the oxygen with you
Yes, right.
to allow the fuel and oxygen, okay, fuel and the oxygen. Actually, not oxygen really. Oxygen is taken only for liquid, the cryogenic engines. Like when you have hydrogen, you have oxygen as the oxidizer. When you have liquid propellant, liquid fuels, then you use a liquid like nitric acid you use for oxidizer. So you use oxidizing agent, and when rocket you have to carry the oxidizing agent with you to allow the fuel to burn. So that is the thing. Even though there is no oxygen up there, we have to carry the oxygen with us.
Yes, right. So our next question is why exhaust pressure is more than exhaust velocity in solid engines?
This is somewhat confusing because you cannot equate pressure and velocity. Pressure is one parameter, or velocity another parameter. But see what is happening, I think I can get the meaning of the question. Like, see, it's not only solid engine, liquid or any engine. You start with a fuel and oxidizer, which are burned to produce huge amount of gas under high pressure. So initially the pressure is very high, then it passes through the nozzle, and after passing through the nozzle, it generates velocity. So and initially velocity is going to be less low. So
Okay.
in solid engines, initially pressure is very high, and velocity, because you are starting off less, it is very low. But slowly as the speed goes up, the pressure remains same, but the velocity will go up. So while you cannot equate the pressure and velocity, the fact is that the pressure of the engine is very high. Gases pressure in the engine is very high. Velocity keeps changing. It keeps on going up.
Okay. So our next question is what is remote testing satellite?
It's not remote testing. It should be remote sensing.
Yeah, it's
I
remote
think
sensing,
that's what
but
is
some of
meant.
our audience have asked it. It is remote sensing.
You can't test anything with a remote satellite. Um, my I don't really know what can be a remote testing satellite, because what will you test remotely? I don't understand.
Yeah, yeah.
But remote
Then
sensing,
the question then converts into remote sensing only.
remote sensing. Yes, remote sensing satellite is one which basically the idea is to the satellite. What can the satellite do? It is there in orbit. It has a camera which is looking downwards, so it will map the area underneath, and then it is up to us, up to the people who are on the ground, to see that map will show vegetation, cultivation, forest, ocean, seas, and so uh, crops and available fishes, so many things it can, whatever it is supposed to map, it is sensing remotely and telling the data to, sending the data to. That's why it's called a remote sensing satellite.
Yes, right.
So that is the basic. It can also be used for defense applications. You can see the enemy locations, you can map them and give it to us. So a remote sensing satellite has a lot of applications, and so all these things will be coming under remote sensing satellite.
Okay.
Remote testing doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. So our next question is how can the direction and tangential velocity of a satellite can be changed after it is launched?
See, it's like this. After a satellite has got its own set of thrusters, small rocket engines,
Yes.
which which are used to. There are two things it is used for. It is used for, first of all, it is used for keeping the satellite in a stable condition in whichever orbit it is supposed to be.
Yes.
That goes station keeping. And second thing is to change its direction. Obviously, changing direction required if you want to keep the satellite in position somewhere. Because if it is drifting away, you have to correct it. That means you have to change the direction and bring it. So for that, there are small thrusters in the satellite, and those thrusters are powered by what? By same helium, which we talked about some time back. Helium under high pressure, it is stored in the satellite, and that is let out sometimes this side, sometimes this side, so that so as to, and by the third law of motion, is the satellite going to turn accordingly, and you'll be able to control it. So
Okay.
that is how a satellite is controlled in after it is launched.
Okay. So one of our audience has asked that can we think of battery operated engines?
I suppose he means battery operated engine for rockets, not for car and all the hota hi hai. For rockets, a battery operated engine is, see, first of all, we should understand that a rocket works only by the principle of third law of motion, that it has to, something has to be ejected out from the rocket for it to move forward. Now, a battery cannot throw anything out of the rocket. It
Yes.
can only throw itself out. There's nothing else which can be done. So, a battery operated uh, rocket engine is not at the present, it's not practical. There may be later times when something may emerge by which you can use a battery operated rocket engine, but as of today, no, we cannot use batteries for rocket engines.
Okay. So our next question is, what is preventive measures that are taken for space debris?
Now, space debris, what is space debris? Space debris is those satellites which have become non-functional. They have become dead for various reasons. Either propellant khatam ho gaya unka, or their use has ended, or something has gone wrong in the satellites. Or there's some material which, while it was being launched, that material is escaped and it is still floating around in the space. So the space shuttles वगैरह हैं, which can be used for bringing old satellites back, but it is not found worthwhile to do that thing, because in a satellite which has been created, which has been launched, let's say 5 years back, it has been made 6, 7 years ago. Technology has changed so drastically that bringing it back, repairing it, and sending it again is not worth.
Yes, right.
So best thing, if at all possible, would be to destroy it right there. But even for that, there is no solution at present. That's why debris is there, is going to be there all the time. It's going to increase only all the time. Nothing can be done about it.
Okay. So our next question is, what is perigee?
See, when a satellite is put in orbit, generally it goes into an elliptical orbit. So elliptical orbit has, in the elliptical orbit, what happens is the uh, the uh, the planet, let's say Earth, it is at one of the foci of the ellipse, and and so the satellite goes around it in an elliptical way. So the shortest distance from Earth of the satellite is called the perigee. The longest distance is called apogee.
Okay.
There's one more thing. The apogee and perigee is only for Earth.
Okay.
When we are talking of orbits around the sun, it's called perihelion and aphelion.
Okay.
And when you are going around the moon, then the shorter distance around with moon as the base called uh, perisynthion, and farther point aposynthion. So that G part only refers to Earth. So that's
Okay.
how perigee comes to.
Okay. So next question is, what type of communication devices are used in the satellite?
Uh, Satellites carry out two types of communication with ground. One is for its own station keeping. That is, there'll be a ground station which will monitor whether the satellite is going, whether the satellite is being kept in orbit or is going astray. So it has to be corrected. So that sort of communication takes place with the ground station and the satellite. So to fire thrusters, this fire that thruster, fire this thruster, in what sequence to maintain its position. The second communication is for its own application. That is for TV or broadcast or remote sensing, whatever. For that, you have standard set of electronics, which are huge amount of electronic, huge transmitters on ground and very sensitive receivers and corresponding transmitter receiver on the satellite. So that is the communication part of the satellite.
Okay. So our next question is, how even the satellites get energy from sun in night? That is when the
See,
satellite is in eclipse mode.
yeah, that's what I was saying. That night for satellite means when it's in eclipse by the Earth.
Yes.
So at that time we have got batteries in the satellite. Batteries are charged during the daytime when the sun is there, and it is that battery is being used at night.
Okay. So next question is, are satellites visible in night sky?
Satellites are never visible. I'll tell you why. Because to be visible, it either should have light of its own,
Yes.
which it doesn't have, because there's no man sitting over there to put a light on. So it doesn't have a light of its own. And like moon, it can reflect sun's light and send it, but it is so small compared to nothing. It is so small that even that we cannot see it as in it with a telescope. We can sense it by using a receiver. Whatever transmission it is sending, we can sense that, but we cannot see it ever. So anybody who's saying I saw a space shuttle or this or that, no, that's not true.
Sir,
You
then
don't see
how? Sir, then how in case of ISS visibility?
it. ISS you can't see. Who says that you saw ISS?
Okay.
Nobody has seen ISS. See, you can see some. See, supposing aeroplane is flying. Aeroplane flies at a height of about 35,000-40,000 feet. Okay, at that height, you can see a aircraft only because there are lights inside the aircraft or the navigation light of the aircraft which are visible.
Yes, right.
ISS is flying at 300 kilometers height. It doesn't, and there may be no lights which are pointing downwards. So I don't think you can see the ISS.
Okay.
That's what I think. Maybe there's some way of seeing it. I don't know about that.
Yeah, so because we have posted some videos on our Instagram page regarding visibility of ISS. So in night sky, we have saw ISS in the sky.
No, how did you see ISS? Well, you must have seen a dot.
Yes, right.
That whole big structure which
No, no, no.
with
It
the,
is just a dot structure.
it's just a light. It
Yes.
could be an aircraft. How do you say it is ISS?
Okay, okay, okay.
Or it could be a comet. It could be some shooting star. Could be anything like that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, there's one information coming that ISRO chief Dr. Shivan has got a 2020 Von Karman Award. That's coming in news right now.
That's the highest award. And
Highest possible award for in space science.
We should be proud that ISRO chairman.
Okay, and 9 o'clock he will be interviewed on TV.
Yeah.
Shivan's interview on TV will be at 9 o'clock.
Okay. I request all to please watch this interview after this lecture. So we should congratulate Mr. K7 for getting such a prestigious award.
It's
So with this,
really big thing.
yeah, that's true. So we'll just move ahead.
Yeah, we move it.
Can radioactive technologies be used in space science?
You mean for propulsion of a rocket?
Yes.
Radioactivity for propulsion of a rocket. See, this thing I have already. I know. As we said just some time back, rockets move only because of third law of motion. Radioactivity cannot give you anything which can be pushed out at a high to provide a high momentum to move a satellite forward, move a rocket forward. So anyway, by today's technology, we cannot use radioactivity. What he means is actually nuclear fuels for carrying out rocket propulsion. Maybe after some time something may be possible, which I cannot say right now. Next.
Okay, next question is, what is the thing that can be used to communicate satellites? So I don't think so. This is a valid question because we already discussed it earlier that communication satellite can be communicated through.
Okay. That thing what he's saying is a something like a building full of electronics.
Yes.
And transmitters, antenna, receivers, all those things are there, which will cover a whole building. That much is required. That's the thing which is used.
Yes, right. So next question is SpaceX organization helping in Gaganyaan mission?
See, you say I am nationalistic, but Gaganyaan is 100% indigenous. We are not taking help from anybody for this, except for astronaut training, which is happening in Russia. But otherwise, ISRO is totally 100% carrying out all the everything for Gaganyaan. No SpaceX or NASA or ESA or anything.
We are totally a type of Swadeshi type of thing.
Yes, total Swadeshi. Absolutely.
So the next question we'll move on. Why exhaust pressure is more than exhaust velocity in solid engine? So this is the question we answered. So is there a defense mechanism in a satellite which can protect itself from a satellite missile?
This is a defense matter, so we will not talk about it.
Okay. So what is RATO and what is it used for?
RATO stands for Rocket Assisted Takeoff. That is, see, when you want to send some set of instruments, see, like sounding rockets are there, which carry a set of instruments at high altitude, and they release it for studying the atmosphere. Now, rocket assisted takeoff is when you fly a rocket horizontally and you want to study the atmosphere under hypersonic condition, that is at around 2000 kilometers per hour speeds and all that. So it is used for those purposes, for studying the atmosphere under very high velocity conditions. the rocket is to take off. Next.
Next question is can we use planet's gravitational force and take advantage of orbital momentum to reach out of solar system without wasting much fuel? So this is an interesting question.
Yeah, it is true. And in fact, it has been used because one of the NASA satellites, Pioneer, I think, it was sent. It was supposed to go to outer space, so it was launched. Then it reached Mars and then Jupiter. It was accelerated by Jupiter and proceeded forward. Then reached Saturn and went around. It was used by Saturn's gravity to turn around Saturn and go out into outer space.
Okay.
So it is used. It is very much used. It has, when this thing happened about, no, it was launched about something like 10 12 years back. And I think year or two back, it crossed Saturn and got diverted out of the solar. But one more interesting thing is that while exiting from Saturn, it took a picture of Earth, a very small dot, which was our Earth. It sent a photo and sent it. I think it's there on YouTube. Can be seen. The Pioneer's photo of Earth as seen from Saturn.
Yeah. So our next question is, when was the production of V2 rocket began?
V2 was used by the Germans to bombard London during Second World War. So it was a guided missile, I will not say state of the art, it is much more than state of the art technology, which was a guided missile to launch from somewhere on the continent, maybe somewhere close to French border, and it was used for bombarding London. But so V2 was obviously made in the early 1940s, when then after its designer Werner von Braun, he defected to USA. Then obviously this thing stopped. So early 40s is the answer.
Okay. So our next question is a geostationary satellite used for communication, and what is the resolution of a spy satellite?
Spy satellite. Just a minute. And can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so sure. So question is geostationary satellite used for communication, and what is the resolution of a spy satellite?
Well, geostationary satellite is used for communication, and the reason is that geostationary satellite is fixed at a point above the Earth. So it is just like a satellite repeater station or transmitting station which is at a fixed position on top of the Earth. So it is used way to use for communication. And the second part, again, defense, I will not talk about it.
Yes.
Second part is defense.
Yes. So next question is, which fuel is used in PSLV and GSLV specifically?
Okay, there is a big list. I think what I'll do is I'll speak them out, but then I think I'll forward one PPT to you for this thing. PSLV has got 5 stages. There's a strap-on stage and core 2, 3, 4. So 5 stages. Strap-ons are solid fuel. Core is solid fuel. Second stage is liquid. Third is solid. Fourth is liquid again. That is PSLV. In GSLV, again there are 4 stages. There are 4 strap-on motors which are liquid engines. Then there's a core which is solid. Second stage is liquid. Third is cryogenic engine. And Mark III has 3 stages only. There are the 2 strap-ons which are solid motors. There's a core which is liquid L110, and then the cryogenic stage. So this is in general the propellant configuration for the three PSLV, GSLV, and Mark III.
Okay, so our next question is, what food is being used by people living in space? What type of food is it?
That is one question about which I have no idea at all.
Okay, okay.
Because
So
first of all, मतलब भाजी पाव तो नहीं खाएगा वहाँ पर.
yes, yes, right.
Because see, the thing is, there's no gravity over there. So food which now we normally we don't know, we don't realize it, but gravity is a big helper in our taking the food into our mouth and just going into this digestive system.
Yes,
But
right.
when gravity is not there, how this is going to be done is something which I don't have any idea.
Yeah, right. When the gravity is not, the digestion is also difficult.
I know, so I don't know what they're going to do over there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So our next question is, uh, will there be future technologies to make satellite which is not functioning right now? Like repairing, or what type of technology are they coming, or is ISRO working on that?
See, at present, non-functional satellites, we just leave them, leave them alone, because as I said, there's not much use in repairing old satellites. The technology has changed, but there, I don't know. Maybe in the future there's some technology, maybe there to bring it back and do something about it. At present, nobody does anything about it. It just left it as it.
Okay, okay, okay. So, sir, our next question is, when tangential velocity is high, satellite follows elliptical path, but why does it not follow a bigger circular path?
Okay, it's like this. The the all satellites, when they go into orbit, they follow the Kepler's law of planetary motion, in which one of the laws is it's called, it says the second law. It says the aerial velocity is constant. Now, what is aerial velocity? See, we know what is linear velocity, that is the distance covered in a certain amount of time. In this case, what they say is the area covered. Area means if from the satellite you draw a line to the planet and see how much area it is covering, that sector, area of the sector. That area of the sector is going to be constant throughout the orbital period. So what happens is, at the time of perigee, this distance is small. So the arc distance is very high. Sorry. So at that time, what is the question? At that time, the actual velocity is going to be high.
Okay.
And when it goes into the apogee, where the linear the distance from the planet is high, that time the length covered will be small. So the speed going to be less. You can just, it's not the right example, but we can think that when you throw a ball up, initially the speed is high, but when it reaches the top, farthest away from your hand, then the speed is very low, almost zero.
Yes.
And then it starts falling back towards through gravity, start coming back, and then again the speed increases.
Yes.
So you can imagine the same thing going on here also. So at the time of apogee, the speed is very low. At the same perigee, the speed is very high. But now what the question he says is, see, suppose you give more thrust, the aerial velocity going to increase. But still, it may not become the circular. Eccentricity may reduce. It may become less elliptical, more circular. It may not become fully circular. To make an orbit fully circular, at the apogee point, you have to give a kick. of the correct velocity, so it goes into a circle of that size.
Okay. So next question is, can you please explain, compare the explanation of perigee with our Mangalyaan mission?
Okay, I think I'll go to I will share one video with PowerPoint with that.
Yeah, sure, sir.
I think I am lost somewhere. I have to bring myself also in the picture.
Yeah, sir. You may continue.
Am I visible?
Yeah.
Okay, here's one very interesting example of. I think this question is either right now or coming later. That why does the orbiting body stay in orbit and doesn't fall to the Earth?
Yes.
And the answer is it's because of gravity. So gravity not only pulls it down, but it also makes it fly in an orbit. How it happens, I'll just explain that to you. It is not a very technically correct example, but it helps in understanding. See, supposing you see an object which is allowed to fall freely towards the Earth. It drops from a height h1, it will fall through a distance h1. That is obvious. But the thing is, Earth is not flat; it is spherical. So what happens is, if this object it is given a linear velocity and then allowed to fall. So what will happen is something like this. It will fall through a distance which is slightly more than h1.
Yes, right.
Because the Earth is the distance to Earth is slightly more. And if you give more velocity, h2 is going to go more and more and more till it so happens that the distance is so much that the object will just miss the Earth, like this. It will miss the Earth completely, and then keep on falling all the time. So you can say it is the satellite is always falling towards the Earth. It always misses the Earth. This is not a very good technically correct example, but it makes help understand. Okay, now I think I have to bring myself also in. Okay, now I am visible. So I think this will somewhat explain how if something goes into orbit, the falling is also because of gravity, and going to orbit is also because of gravity.
Okay.
Now, okay, so this is what I am saying, that for something going to orbit, you have to know the gravitational field of the central body, and you have to give it critical horizontal velocity. Okay, now you're talking of Mangalyaan.
Yes, right. The
So
perigee
basically
regarding the
what
Mangalyaan.
happens in See, in Mangalyaan, we started with with an orbit which is something like 180 kilometers at the time of perigee, and about 22,000 kilometers at apogee. Then we did orbit raising, and we reached around 50,000 kilometer in apogee. After that, you do what's known as Hoffman transfer. Mass is transferred from the Earth's orbit to a transfer orbit to Mars. It's called mass transfer trajectory. So that orbital period, we found was about 300 something days, 316 days. It took that much time to go from Earth's orbit to the Mars orbit, and then at that point, when it reaches close to Mars, you give it a kick by firing one of the thrusters, so that it goes into an orbit around the Mars. So this is how it goes into an perigee of Mars and apogee of Mars. Earlier it was in perigee of Earth and apogee of Earth, and this is how the whole orbiting took place.
Okay.
This is the basic idea. I think we can close this because there's nothing more which is in this term. Stop the share. Okay, next. We go to next.
Next question is why we cannot use repulsion of magnets to fly? Repulsion of magnets to fly.
See, force of repulsion of magnets. See, it may be it may be possible that you have a magnet in the rocket and a magnet on the launch pad, and the two are of the same polarity, so it will slightly jump up. But after that, the as it goes higher, the force of repulsion will reduce, so it will fall back. Then again, it will. So it is not a viable solution to use repulsion of magnets to fly a rocket.
Yes, right.
Levitation, yes, the maglev which is running Shanghai, that the distance between the rail and the maglev, the train, is only a few less than a millimeter. Only that much height is there. Maybe a millimeter or so. But expecting repulsion of magnets to take it to orbit, that is not possible.
Okay. So our next question is what process is used for satellite to land on other planets?
I just showed this method is same. What happens is if there's atmosphere on the planet, then you use parachutes to reduce the speed. Basically, it's going at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour speed. To reduce it to zero. So for reducing it to zero, you have to use very heavy parachutes to reduce the speed. But if there's no atmosphere like on the moon, then you have to use retro rockets, which will, while it's going down, it will give a thrust in the opposite direction to reduce the speed. And when that's what was done for Mangalyaan also. Only something misfired in that. So, but if it had worked, it would have slowly got down to almost zero velocity and landed very nicely on the moon. So this is how the two methods are used.
Okay. So our next question is why is it difficult to reach the other side of the moon?
It's not difficult. You can reach the other side of the moon just like you can reach this side of the moon. But the problem is that it is always away from the Earth. So you will not know whether you have landed properly, or you will not be able to communicate also with that one. So there's no point in going to the other side of the moon unless you have got some transmitting antenna which is high up, so high up that it can communicate with Earth. And that technology we have not thought of so far. Nobody has thought of. So we normally don't land on the other side of the moon.
Okay. So next question is there any technology to bring the unused satellite back to Earth again that we discussed earlier?
That already we have done, yes.
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
done that.
So next question is why the path of a satellite is not redirected by planet's gravitational force?
No, we have done that. That also we have done.
Yeah, we have done that.
I told you about Pioneer, which is
Yeah,
goes on Saturn. And
yeah, right. So next question is ISRO planning for any Mars mankind mission?
manned mission.
Yes.
Let's have a manned mission to moon first.
Yes, right.
Before that, we'll have a manned mission. We'll have our own Gaganyaan. Then we'll have our own space station. Then we'll think of going to the moon. Then we'll think of going to Mars. But it is not that we are not planning. It is that it will take time.
Yes, right.
So we'll do it.
Yeah. The next question is what is used in satellite for communication temperature of combustion chamber in rocket?
Didn't follow. Question is not very clear.
Okay, so question is basically I'll just elaborate it. How is temperature of combustion chamber in rocket like maintained? Hello.
Combustion chamber is, see, there's a combustion chamber in which the gases are ignited. The two gases are very, very pure form. And when the two are ignited, they'll only ignite at a certain specific temperature. You don't have to either monitor it or control it. It will happen, and it will happen at a fixed temperature only. So,
Okay.
is there any better explanation for that?
Okay. So next question is, when a meteoroid is passing very near to Earth, then what is done to keep that away from Earth?
You can't do anything. See, it is not a body which can be controlled by anything on Earth. It is so huge that you cannot even bombard it. So, we see, first of all, asteroids are generally in an orbit which is beyond Mars, between Mars and Jupiter. So, an asteroid coming towards Earth, like one we heard recently was coming very close to the Earth, you really cannot do anything about it. If it hits the Earth, it hits the Earth. I don't
Okay.
think there's any way to avoid that one.
Yes.
You can neither kill it nor you can deflect it. You cannot do anything about it.
Okay. Our next question is, could be the life on Kepler exist?
See, Kepler is a set of planets which are about, I think, 300 light years away. Or I don't know, maybe 300 million light years away. I'm not very sure about that. Which have got conditions which are just like those of Earth. I mean, it has a good planet, I mean, a good temperature like ours. Possibly it has water, possibly it has vegetation. All those things are not known. But and we don't know whether there's any life on those Kepler planets or not. And we don't even know whether that life is superhuman, better than ours, or subhuman, worse than ours. What stage of evolution they are. So that is still speculation only. We don't know about that.
Okay. So our next question is, uh, what are the technical settings made in the rover sent for the planet studies?
Normally, what we look for in the planet study is its first of all the content of the atmosphere. What sort of gases are there in the atmosphere? What is the soil like? What sort of chemicals are there in the soil? What is the temperature? Uh, if there any vegetation, what sort of vegetation is there? So all that we have got some spectrographs and chromatographs which are kept on the in the satellite which lands on the different planets, and that data is sent to us. So that's it. We don't. That's the type of thing which we have: chromatography and spectrograph instruments,
Okay.
which will monitor the atmosphere and the soil.
Okay. Okay. So next question is, why ISRO doesn't have any missions regarding extraterrestrial life?
What is extraterrestrial life? As, as of today, I'm telling, as of today, there's no concrete evidence of any planet in the whole, not solar system, not galaxy, in the whole universe, about which we know that it has any life. We don't know. We don't know specifically. We can guess, but we don't know specifically whether there is any extraterrestrial life on any other planet. So that question doesn't arise at present.
Yes.
Why ISRO? Even NASA doesn't have anything.
Yes, that's right. So we are now in the last question of the day. So can any asteroid give us a new metal or a new element which will come on Earth?
I'm sure it can. I'm sure there could be some different elements, but let me tell you that from element number 1, atomic number 1 to atomic number 92, uranium, and even up to beyond that, up to 103, there is no gap. All the elements are known, from hydrogen to whatever number 103. So if anything is found, that is only going to be beyond 103. And even whatever we have found in the last few elements is those elements have very, very short life. They are created in the lab and they die in a few microseconds, they die, but we have created them. So finding an element which is between 1 and 92 or 1 and 103 is not possible because we already have all of them. Anything beyond that, maybe we don't know, quite possible.
Okay. So thank you, Lal sir, for such an
Thank you.
interactive and nice session. So I hope that all the questions of our audience has been cleared and they will be satisfied with all these answers. So thank you, Lal sir,
If
for
not,
giving.
I am always available. I can answer some more questions also.
Yeah. So we'll just keep one more session regarding that. So we would like to thank
Yeah.
Lal sir for giving his valuable time, and we will now
Thank you.
conclude our session for today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.